Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We're on the Drinking Bro set today because I have two guests.
Oh, yeah.
I Came with Fire podcast, Brandon and Chris. I won't use your last names because you guys are both on the run
It's true.
from the police. We're not going to say what day we're recording this either, although you can figure it out with context clues. Brandon, you were an Air Force security forces person or a cop,
I was.
which is gross. And then
sorry.
we had a bunch of cops in here yesterday raising hell.
That's pretty good.
Drinking and
I can say
fucking
that.
throwing dildos around or whatever. Chris, you are an 18 Delta
Yes.
and didn't bring any drugs. So.
Yeah, no.
Wrong
I
group.
Left him over at the hotel. But I am legally required to say that any and all opinions that I give here, hanging out with you, are completely and totally my own. They do not represent the United States Army, the Department of War, or any other entity within the United States government.
It's a lot more fun to say it now that it's the Department of War, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. Tastes better.
Yeah. Defense. What does that even mean? So you guys do the I Came with Fire podcast. It's conspiracy theories and dark history and all kinds of weird shit like that. It's very entertaining.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, if you're into that sort of thing, which I am. A big motif on the show is critical thinking, right? Which is something that we're not really good at as a country anymore. Maybe as human beings, because the people that haven't done it historically obviously haven't started doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the Middle East, Africa, they're not getting into critical thinking anytime
No.
soon. But the
all
West
the
has
inbreeding.
completely lost its ass. I mean, we're just all a bunch of knuckleheads now.
I agree. It's a shame to see because it didn't take that long. I remember even prior to joining the military, watching this happen, specifically going to college. And I'm on campus. I'm a military brat, by the way, right? So I have, I think, probably a more idealized version of America in my head just from growing up on base.
What do you mean by that?
So everybody I grew up around was in the military. My dad, my grandparents, my uncles, all the branches. I grew up on base. All my dad's friends were service members, all their kids, right? We have this very idealized version of who Americans are. And because my experience with Americans at that point essentially were dependents and service members. And so this is my first time really being in a setting where there aren't a bunch of service members around. And you know, I'm interacting with kids who have no fucking idea about any of our real history. They just have this very false sense of what is going on in our country, and this thing at the time that's been taking over the news about the GWAT. And I'm watching these kids draw like chalk outline bodies on the sidewalk at school and protesting, like calling troops baby killers and stuff like this. And my dad made it a point to teach me a lot about history and, made me read a lot of books. And, I'm seeing this stuff. I'm like, well, this is very akin to what was going on in the civil rights movement and what was going on with Vietnam. I see all this stuff is sort of being regurgitated. So I remember seeing this resurgence, I'll call it, because this isn't anything new, and interacting with kids on campus and being like, you guys are fucking nuts. Like, if you really think service members are these people that the news is telling you, or like you feel, this is like 06, you know what I mean? So like GWAT's been going on for a couple years at that point, but it just was my realization that not everybody thinks this way. And this version of America I had in my head was people who believe in it. It's like that G.K. Chesterton quote about Rome, like, why was Rome great? Because men loved her. It's like, that's why America was great to me, because I was taught to appreciate her, and none of these other people around me do. And then I joined the Air Force and saw that there was a lot of that already. With some of the young airmen I was coming to the Air Force with, sort of had this thought process about the United States too. So that's kind of what I mean, idealized.
Yeah. I think the biggest component there is being grateful, that's a hard thing to communicate to somebody who's been told they deserve things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a very odd way to parent, I think. Not just to parent, but to lead even adults. You can see the lack of gratitude and where it leads people typically towards collectivism, in my opinion, on either side, right? People that are The thing you should be most grateful for, aside, I guess, maybe from just your life, is something that's a core component of your life as well, which is liberty, right? Like if you're most grateful for your life, what is your life exactly? Your life is the fact that you control it and the choices you make, right? That's what your life is, because you can tailor it however you see fit. And people that are not grateful don't see it that way. They feel, I don't know what the chicken or the egg is necessarily, but they don't feel like they're in control. And as such, they have to control everybody else, which is, a fucked up way to think about it. But from a traumatic standpoint, I can kind of understand that. If you're feeling like everybody else is in control of you, you're going to try to exert some of that yourself.
I think there's actually a really logical way to think about that. I was a big fan of, still am a really big fan of Sebastian Junger's book Tribe, and he makes this premise that society has to have a unified struggle, and we don't have a lot of struggle here at all anymore. We live in a very developed first world society. Even with the things that are wrong with America today, you can want for absolutely nothing if you are willing to just do a little bit of work. And I think that this almost like what you're describing, this lack of control sort of pushes people towards this unprincipled way of carrying on with life. And they see somebody who is very adamant about their opinions, talking like collectivist thought here, right? Very adamant about their opinions. They found a scapegoat, right? There's kernels of truth in what they're saying. So there's this sophistry element going on. But they don't necessarily feel like they have control because they're not struggling for anything. So they don't have that control in their own life, right? If you're working for something, if you found something that you can do with the community, and you're just kind of bopping around now, you have nothing, you don't know what to think, everything you could ever want is provided for you, you don't need to really act on anything in your life, and you see and you can acknowledge that there's things going wrong and you don't like it because whether or not you have principles, you have a personality, and you can recognize, well, I don't like this and I have an opinion on it, but it's not a very educated opinion. I've never actually done a bunch of things to try to make anything better, but you look like you are, and so it's really easy to get sort of not necessarily bought into, but pulled into collectivist thought because it seems like action, but it isn't, because it gives you that false sense of community, I feel like, where we know that collectivists will turn on each other immediately, and that hasn't quite happened yet, I'd say, on the right, and because the collectivist thought is sort of coming into the right side of thinking, but it hasn't gotten to the point necessarily where it's gone full left woke, turned on itself, where you've got the woke Olympics going on. There's some of it, but that's why people get sucked into collectivist thought, I feel like, because they haven't had to want for anything. They haven't had to really work hard for much. There's no unifying struggle here that principles you as a person to, I guess, develop your brain enough to understand that, what actually unites community isn't looking at somebody else and blaming them for your problems. It's that liberty you're talking about and saying, well, it's on us to do this. That's real community. If I trust Chris and me and him have a problem as a community and we handle it together, even if we disagree on some of the things from point A to point B, and we still arrive at B, even with disagreement, that builds trust, right? You go online, you get in these communities with people with this collectivist thought you're talking about, and you don't have to do anything. You can be a part of the hive mind by just listening and interacting in a live chat. That's not real trust. That's not real community. That's not real. It's not real at all, What do you think? I would agree.
No, I agree with everything you said, and I think at a deeper level too, like the natural state of man is to suffer, and so it's like in the lack of true suffering, right? You go back to Paleolithic era, right? It's like, oh, where's my next meal going to come from? Like security is a minute by minute thing throughout the day, and so then like to your point of like shared struggle in that. You have to solve problems together, like where the next meal is going to come from, who's going to take next fire watch tonight, like all that kind of stuff. But then nowadays, and to your original point about like just ungratefulness, in the lack of like any type of true suffering or struggle that we have, especially in the West, and especially in the United States, like people are starting to invent their own suffering to make up for that.
Yeah.
And it's wild to watch. And so that's where I think this original like race to the bottom of the victimhood barrel started from.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think people just don't have a great sense of the mechanics of things and how we work, not just on the individual level, but in society. I mean, to the individual level, we define ourselves by polarity almost always, right? Hot, cold, man, woman, strong, weak, and then in this case, struggle versus comfort, right? The comfort that we have is meaningless without the struggle. That's the point that people just can't get through their fucking heads. I don't understand it.
Can't have the highs without the lows.
No, it's
right?
it's just not. That's not how life works. You can't have weak without strong. Like the weak can't exist without the strong. The strong have no purpose without the weak. All of this is the way that life has always worked. And you see what happens in the situation that you're describing when things become tumultuous in a situation where people aren't focused on the same things. You can see this in social settings. You can see it in the workplace. I'm sure you've seen it as an operator. Everybody thinks they're the only ones doing any work. Everybody else is lazy or fucked up or whatever, right? And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The people that think that way trend towards nihilism. They stop giving 100% effort or whatever, or they give, I guess, maybe they give full effort, but there's something lacking. I don't know, but this happens in broader society as well when people are either literally struggling or convinced by someone else that they are struggling, right? Or that they're struggling, but there's no purpose to the struggle because there's no light at the end of that tunnel, which is what we've told most minorities in this country. Like you can't, like, America's against you.
Yeah, sorry.
Despite the fact that we have more black millionaires in this country than exist anywhere else on earth combined, you can't make it here. That's what you're told, right? And as such, you think, well, there's no reason for me to participate in this society anymore. And that is a form of nihilism that's very difficult to overcome.
Well, it's funny. I had this conversation with somebody, a black military member, when I was still active duty, and this is when General Brown was still the Air Force Chief of Staff, so it wasn't that long ago. And I was sort of making the point.
That's the guy that said his first mission was to do what? What was it? Fuck.
I don't know, Air Force generals.
I remember the commercial he had where he said, basically, it doesn't matter, like, whatever color airman it is, they're kicking your butt. Do you remember that one? Yeah. That was kind of dorky. It was like the Air Force's quiet insertion of DEI into, like, I don't know, man. That doesn't really make a lot of sense.
When he first took over, he made some comment about, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something on the DEI line.
Yeah.
It's like, just shut the fuck up, dude.
Yeah.
Just go kill people and shut up.
Exactly. Well, and that commercial I'm talking about is pretty cool until you get to the end and he's sitting on a fucking chair in a hangar and he makes that comment about brown, black, or white, it's an airman kicking your butt. Like, yeah, we all get that, Everybody, if you've ever served...
R. Lee Ermey said it a lot better.
The Army did?
R. Lee Ermey.
Oh, R. Lee Ermey.
Yeah, in Full Metal Jacket said it quite a bit better. I won't repeat it here because we will get kicked off of every platform, but
Exactly.
he definitely said it better.
Yeah.
You're light green and dark green,
right.
essentially at the end of the statement is what he said.
haven't
But
seen Full Metal
he
Jacket
said a number of things before that, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's never been in question
No.
for any of us.
Well, no, and I
Why
tried-
the fuck are you repeating that? Who's the audience for that statement? Exactly, because none of us ever questioned any of that.
No. Well, and
the
that
fuck?
sort of appeared with the extremism stand down. I remember one day being called in and told, hey, we're going to have this meeting. The captain's going to come to guard mount, and we're going to talk about the problems in the Air Force culture with racism. And I was like, what? Like, I couldn't tell you how many black best friends I've had in my service here, right? And to the conversation I was talking to this airman about, he was making this point about how racism was bad in the military and he could see it. And I just presented him with this notion like, hey, you're talking about how you feel like you're not advancing because of your color. And I was like, I would like to know what evidence you think is the reason why you're not. That says your color is why and not your effort. But hey, the actual chief of staff of the Air Force is a black 4-star general. I'm like, do you really think? But the point of that story is, it doesn't matter that exists. Somehow that exists in a silo, right? That there is, no bearing on the fact that he's black, that he made it there, but the fact that you can't make it, now the reason has to be because of your skin color. That makes no sense.
Have you stopped to consider your attitude,
Right.
or maybe your lack of
Your
effort?
work ethic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Any of
or
those
like
things.
what is your ambition exactly when you're serving your country, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we say.
That's a big one.
That's what we say. Like that's got to be the first one.
Yeah.
I think it all started honestly back when they started. You know, it's like, hey, join the army. Like, we'll pay for your college. And I was against it all the way back then. I think that, you know, college credits or scholarships or whatever for veterans, I think that's a good thing. I think we should take care of veterans, right? So I'm not saying that, but when the incentive to join the military and serve your country, where like it could cost you your life, and you're doing that because it's like, oh, I'm just here to get my free college and then I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Like that to my mind, at least back when I joined back in 2011, you know, there were so many people that I went to basic training with that just had that mentality, you know, and it's like, and I went with a lot of guys that were going to go into the intelligence field. So these were dudes that would spend upwards of like 2 years training before they ever got to a unit. And then they would be in the unit for like 24 or 28 months. And then they were bouncing, you know, and it's like, well, why are you here? First of all, it was for college, you know, it's like, but that can't be enough of a driving factor for this type of service.
They tried, not tried, they did that in the 80s as well because they were having trouble post-Vietnam getting recruits, right? And they were, you know, the DOD at the time, DOW now, was concerned about a near-peer war with Russia. So obviously we got to have guys. And yeah, I mean, the incentive structure for anything matters. Why the incentive structure you build, and this goes for your personal life too, will determine the kind of people that show up.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you put a sign on the front of your building that says free shit, like losers are showing
You're
up.
going to get, exactly.
Not saying that people that join for college are losers necessarily.
Right.
That's not what I mean. But I mean, in that scenario, if your only marketable point is that you get free shit if you come here, you will get losers.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like to my point earlier, this is not service to you anymore. In your mind,
It's transactional.
Yeah, it is a quid pro quo. Like that's why you're here. I'm here to get something.
Yeah, that's why I think like the veteran community should be on top of making sure the military is getting taken care of. The military shouldn't be worrying about that shit. Shouldn't have to, which is, you know, that's in a perfect world, that's how it would work. We're not in a perfect world, and there's a lot of military families. People are trying to talk about it now because there's a government shutdown and make political hay out of it. But there's a lot of military families that are going to the food banks all the time, not just now.
Yeah.
That's a common thing, right? Like I think there's something like 40 or 50,000 active duty service members whose family routinely use food banks, something like that.
Yeah. When I was a
That's
young E5, I think I was the only NCO family in my unit, if I remember correctly, that wasn't utilizing like WIC or SNAP. Like it's very, very common now. In fact, there's kind of a mentality of like, if you're not taking advantage of that, what's wrong with you?
Exactly.
And I grew up in the type of way where it's like, well, that's for the less fortunate. That's not for me. That's somebody that
Exactly.
can't afford
Just
it.
as you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is like all these things are indicative of, again, this incentive structure. Yeah, if you can map it onto your personal life too. If you're, let's say you're a young man and you're trying to court women, like you're like, I'm at a point in my life where I feel like I need to get serious and I want to start doing this. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go get a fucking Honda with a spoiler on it and go to the clubs. Okay, well, that's who you're going to get.
Right.
Right.
You're going to attract somebody that's attracted to that nonsense. You know, and if that's what you want, go for it. This is America. Do whatever the fuck you want. You know, if you want your tire slashed, that's on you. But the incentive structure you create in your personal life is the same as the incentive structure you create in your business or in social sphere or obviously even at the government level, right? And not just at the government level, but at the social cultural level. And history, you guys talk a lot about history. History is really important. And the primary reason I think, aside from just the legal structure and framework and and the lessons learned and all that stuff that we can apply to our daily lives. The most important thing is identity and culture, right? That's the most important things you get out of history. Like, hey, we all tried all this stuff. It's fucking stupid. This is who we are now because we know it works. And then you kind of, you moralize those things. Like, I think it's more ethical to be the kind of person that helps other people. And that can be independently true, but it's also true that it is something that generates a high functioning society as well, right? And that's why it became a moral and ethical issue in the first place. One thing serves the other. It's moral and ethical to do the best for everything around you, right? Otherwise, you're a fucking leech.
Right. Well, if you can't take, if your community is so big, let's just use like our country in general, that you don't have to put in any effort and you can essentially have the same quality of life of somebody who goes to work and pays their taxes, then there is no incentive to participate. I almost think there's an argument for saying things have gotten too big to have a community anymore, and that this notion of wanting to be a participant has to come from that intrinsic moral system you're talking about, that you have to recognize, well, there's all these processes in town here that take care of us, but I don't participate in them, but I also want to have an opinion on them. Well, you can build within your little group there that community that you're looking for without focusing so much on the macro. And the micro is where you should get involved in. And it's kind of like that analogy about like, well, if we all did our part here where you're at, you know, then everything else will get better. Well, like there's truth to that. If I recognize it, like I can use a personal anecdotal reason here, you know, where I live, unfortunately in California for the time being, my son just started going to school publicly, and I'm not from California, I'm not even from the area that we live. And I start, you know, getting involved in what he's, you know, where he's going to go and seeing who's there. And I learned that he's going to be the only English speaker in class, and that the majority of people that are on the school board are Punjabi or they're Hispanic. And it's just like, okay, where is anybody that's like actively looking out for people that aren't migrating here? Nobody exists to look out for people who aren't actively migrating here. And I realized, well, that's why all of these programs exist in like a state like California. There's one that they just passed recently, where if you are an immigrant and your kid is going to a public school in California, there's now a program to try and enroll them also in health insurance, and that the state is going to pay for that, and it's part of this, you know, funding for community school here. And there's a word for it. I'm trying to remember the actual term they're using.
Retarded.
It is retarded, but it's when you look at it on the surface, it sounds like, oh, well, we're just looking out for kids, but actually you dig into it and it's got all of these subsidies for health care for their parents and all this other crap. And it's like, well, I know why this happened, because everybody who is a generational American in this area has completely and totally taken that for granted and hasn't gotten involved in it. And these people come here, they're actually struggling, and they get active in the processes that go on here. And now everybody on the school board is, you know, not to be a dickhead, but is brown, right? And none of them are looking out for generational Americans. Yeah. It's like, well, you've all gotten lazy, and now you have a problem with this. Well, if you have a problem with it, I guess you should have gotten fucking involved. And I'm sick of hearing that. You know, how many times have we heard that? And when we do our live shows, like, well, you know, Boomers thought or Gen X thought they could trust the government. It's like, you should have never ever taken your hand off the steering wheel and thought that you could. Because this is what you wind up with. You wind up where you're funding people who come here aren't even citizens yet, and now they get health insurance, or now their kids are going to school and they don't have to pay, but you have to pay. Yeah, like, it makes no sense.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
That's why that sense of identity like has to come from the smallest level of community that you're involved in, whether that's the family or like your local church or your small neighborhood. Right? Like that's where it needs to come from, because if the sense of like shared cultural identity comes from the state, then the state's going to do what's best for the state, and it's going to like form you in a way that like leads you that direction. Next thing you know, right? Multiculturalism, and like now my kid's the only English speaking kid in his entire elementary school class. How does that happen?
Well, look, you said history. Let's talk about American history, right? American history is an experiment on turning multiculturalism into one culture and under one flag, right? This whole Teddy Roosevelt line about we have but one flag. And I've heard people almost use this argument about defending multiculturalism and defending unassimilation or not assimilating into the culture and say, well, aren't we supposed to be a melting pot? It's like, well, you're missing the key feature of what you just said, melting
melting.
pot, right? What you're describing is a cold pot that doesn't have a fire underneath it, that isn't actually amalgamating all these people into one culture. And so that's the piece that you're missing. Like this country, is an experiment on multiculturalism to turn it into one culture. And if we remove that piece, then you have that, what you're talking about here, those unifying principles of struggle and morals and ethics, that the homogeneousness of a society doesn't exist anymore. It just, if you have, it's the same with any small team. It's the same across the board from the micro to the macro. A team can't be a team if you guys are all pulling 500 different directions. A country can't be a country if nobody agrees on what the country is supposed to be. It's just like communication. If you and I can't agree that the sky is blue, then we could sit here and argue all day. We're never going to make any headway because none of us agree on the actual epistemology that we're using.
Yeah. Yeah, there's two angles on this. One's from the left, and I think and one's from the right, obviously, and they both involve the incentive structure, and it's been miscommunicated in a big way. The left has chosen to change the incentive structure for immigrants to, you can come here and work hard and be successful, to you can come here and we'll take care of you. And those are two very different messages.
Come here, get free college.
Yeah,
Back
and
to the same.
And that is a very dangerous thing to tell the world,
Yeah.
that you can come here and we'll take care of you, because you don't think or believe like we do, you don't behave like we do. And then from the right, it's they see this refusal to assimilate and bitch endlessly about it, and then concurrently, as you said, refuse to participate in their own goddamn government in a lot of ways, right? And I'm not talking about voting for president or running for president. I'm talking about local elections, right? Plato says, if you do not take an interest in the affairs of your government, then you are doomed to live under the rule of fools.
Yes.
And that is where you found yourself. Plato said that, by the way, probably 500 or so years before it happened in Rome, give or take.
Yeah.
And, we tend to not learn these lessons really well, and it's a fundamental misunderstanding of American culture that both the left and the right miss on routinely. We prioritize the individual here, right? The individual is a representative of our culture. Collectivism is stupid, regardless of what additional political opinions you have, all that other stuff. Like, I might agree 99% with you, until you mention that, well, that group's responsible. Nope, groups are not responsible for shit. Individuals are, right?
Just this morning, dude.
Yeah. It's decentralization is the key to individual liberty. That's why we set up a government of, yes, we are a Republican government, but we are federalist as well, right? It's specifically federalist, such that no centralized authority at the national level exists, except for defense and some other things that we've specifically granted to them. And then at the end of that statement, we said nothing else, right? Unless you can pass it with super majorities in both houses. It used to be super majorities in both houses. Well, not to even get somebody in the Senate. The states were choosing who went to the Senate instead of the electorate, the voters there. But we can get into that some other time. The key to it is that when the state is large, the individual is small. We found that to be unacceptable as a fundamental premise in America. The founders, like, nope, we don't do that here, right? So no matter which way you turn, whatever political decisions we make or whatever cultural or social decisions we make must be in order to prioritize the individual. So, for example, you look at what I would call an invasion of America by Muslims right now, an unacceptable one. They do not believe this. They do not believe in individuals. They do not believe in decentralization and liberty or any of that shit. They believe in Islam. And that's their right to do somewhere else. They don't have the right to come here and interrupt our system of government any more than somebody that's born here has the right to interrupt our system of government. That's not your job here. Your job is to make the best life you can with your personal work. That's what your job is in this country, period. And it comes from the left, primarily the last, ever. And then, from the right, it's starting with all of this stupid Groyper bullshit.
Yes.
It's getting more and more mainstreamed by people like Tucker and Candace Owens and people, not anybody that anybody should actually take seriously, to be honest, because they're fucking grifting idiots. But It is getting more and more mainstream, and it's deeply concerning to me that people that are somewhat serious people are not calling it out. You know what I mean?
I agree. I don't remember who was talking about it specifically, but when Megyn Kelly was challenged to call out Tucker and she wouldn't, I think that's an example of it. And then I think it was James Lindsay who was saying essentially that there's that whole, there's a big club and you're not in it, and that's why she won't say anything about it. And then the other day we were talking about this today about Matt Walsh, who made this tweet essentially saying, well, on the right, if you have a problem with us, stop calling us out, just send a DM, basically. I'm paraphrasing his tweet about it. And he, basically was saying, let's not argue in public, let's argue in private, and was trying to make this point that we need to have a united front outward instead of what you see, all this bickering back and forth, with the right making us look like we're not organized. And you and I were talking about how much I disagree with that notion, because if you have an opinion, first off, if you're putting it on X, like, you got to know everybody's going to have something to say about what the fuck you just said. And if you have an issue with someone specifically with a platform as big as yours attacking you on the premise, like, you have to understand that person and you should just hash it out right there and see, like, this is that John Stuart Mill, marketplace of ideas. Yeah. Come to life on your phone screen here where we're debating about things.
And it's good for people to see those debates work out in real time like that.
It is. And it's so interesting to see how the right has not caught up with everything that they've blamed the left for a long time and not recognize when they're doing it themselves.
Yeah.
And I think it's sort of, maybe it's because there's this sense of moral high ground they feel like they have. And, then too, the media has definitely had the back of the left side of politics for so long. So there's this like, belief that, if I'm calling you out, it's almost like an act of rebellion. Well, you have to stick to those principles. If the second now that you get some attention and now you actually are people are listening to you, the principles that you've outlined that the left should follow, you must follow those as well. Like, you can't sit here and pretend like, we have the moral high ground constantly. Right. So when we talk, it's the right thing. Like, you can devolve into the collectivism that you're talking about just as easily. You don't want to build a hive mind. You want to build a group of people who are challenging each other. And then syllogism we talk about on the show a lot. If we can argue back and forth and both of our premises are, we agree upon, the basics of it, the idea that comes out the other end, that dialectic, is a better idea. There should be no hiding conversations about, disagreeing on major ideas going on in the political movement, personally.
I agree completely. And Dan Bongino used to say this like so well, explain it to people. It's the idea of like seeing your political opponents as people with bad ideas versus bad people with ideas. Because as soon as you ascribe to yourself this idea of like moral superiority, like how many conflicts throughout world history were always started because one group, for either religious reasons or anything else, thought that they were morally superior to another group of people. And then as soon as you are, and they're bad people with ideas, and then as soon as they become less than human, then what can you now justify doing to them? And that's not to say that all conflict has never been morally divided, right? Like, obviously the United States liberated Europe from fascism, like that was a morally justified war that happened, but that's the exception, not the rule. Throughout world history,
you've now strawmanned the individual as a collective idea, is what you've done, and it becomes really easy to just attack that strawman idea, than engage somebody on their actual ideas. Yeah. And to go to the point about like Candace and Nick Fuentes, and the thing with them that I find really interesting is that they support a brand of history that is completely revisionist, mostly like Nick Fuentes and Tucker, I think. It's so weird to see Nick talk the way he does, and especially his Hitler talk that he does. And I don't think he's joking. I think he truly holds these ideas, and that he believes them and feels this way. But the one thing I see that's really funny is the group of people that find him appealing they exist in this social media space where there's this espousing of Christian identity and then Nazism. And if you go and read, like if you read Mein Kampf, or you read like even like Goebbels's comments on Hitler in private, or like some of Hitler's private conversations in his diaries, the dude hated Christianity, and he even calls it an invention of the Jews and the Bolsheviks, right? And so it's just weird to see like he's blending like Christian nationalism with National Socialism. And it's none of it makes any sense to somebody who actually knows history and what these people thought. Like these two ideas, they don't deserve to be conflated. They're 100% at odds with one another.
No, and it's very easily tellable that he is trying to like regenerate a sense of like white identity, because he like all of his arguments are permeated with that.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Somebody was chirping at me on one social media place or another. I don't fucking remember, to be honest. You know, what has Nick said that's actually collectivist? I'm like, white ethno country. That's
Correct.
literal collectivism. What are you fucking talking about?
Yep.
What do you think that means? So that's a problem with people not knowing what words mean. And I'll tell you, I've got no interest in being united with people who are collectivists. I don't give a shit if it's fascism or Marxism. I don't care. Right. It is a morally objectionable belief, and it's evil at its core. And the reason that it's evil at its core is because of what the fundamental rights of human beings are, the natural rights.
Yep.
The most important of which is the property right, the most important of which is your person, the most important iteration of which is your speech and thought, which is why trying to control speech is trying to control your most important thought. And this is what collectivism has to do, right? To have a white ethno state, or to have a Sharia law, or whatever stupid ass direction it comes from, you have to have 100% compliance. And there's only one way to do that, and that is to control what people think. And the only way to do that is to control what they say. It is literally evil. There's nothing else to be said about that. And, you know, people talk about maintaining the moral high ground. I know a lot of people are butthurt right now that the left is chastising the right for some dipshits in a group chat saying dumb shit. And, you know, the people like J.D. Vance is one of them. A lot of people on the right, most of the leadership of the right now is like, I don't care about that Charlie Kirk got killed, or I don't care about that this person got killed, or that person got killed. Like, okay, so now you're doing moral equivalencies. Is that what we're doing? You can't hold your own side account. You're going to say no to doing the right thing and saying, hey, kids, those are bad ideas. Shut the fuck up. Like, yeah, you're talking shit in a group chat it's not that big a deal, honestly. The big deal is that if any of these assholes that are responding this way were paying any attention to Gen Z right now, they would see the rise of this stuff. They would see that before Nick Fuentes got banned from Spotify last week, he had the #1 podcast in the country. That's not a fucking group chat in private. No. That's a bunch of young kids listening to his fucking filth is what it is. And your job as the leader of the party is to say, you know what, I don't give a fuck what the left is doing. I'm not going to do this whataboutism bullshit. They became violent and extremist because they didn't nip this shit in the bud 20 years ago on their side. Yeah. And that's how it happens. And they're talking about, we don't want to cede the moral high ground to the left to chastise our own party. You've ceded the moral high ground the minute you refuse to chastise your own party for not doing the right fucking thing.
Yep. What you allow is what you condone.
Yeah.
No, it's...
Yeah, and in that, like, because we did an episode about this just a couple weeks ago where we were trying to define horseshoe theory for people that it's like, you know, hey,
the Jews right now. That's the easiest way to do it right now.
Right, exactly.
Which is so fucking lazy. There's so many better groups to hate. If you're going to be a group hater, but whatever.
Well, yeah, but this is...
Like the WNBA, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I hate all of them.
The green dildo of consequences.
But it absolutely shows, like, what we're witnessing here is just that the right is starting to adopt the left's tactics. You haven't, like, to your point, you absolutely are conceding the moral high ground because it's like now Matt Walsh, like, hey, we can't have disagreements in open anymore. Like, we have to be a united front. Like, okay, that's very collectivist thinking. It's like, you know what I mean?
I mean, that's manufacturing consent. You're trying to get people to self-censor.
Exactly.
Which is not great. I mean, that's not the free market of ideas, as John Stuart Mill would say. I mean, the free market of ideas is like, yeah, there's some level of collective action. People see the same word and they're like, oh, well, how is that not collectivist? Like, what? First, let me buy you a dictionary so you can understand what the fuck you're talking about. Just because that word appears in multiple places doesn't mean that the phrase is the same, you fucking asshole. Anyways, that shit drives me nuts.
The fun thing ironically, about collectivism is that it can mean. I use a Dave Grohl quote the other night to describe this, and he was asked essentially. He's like, "Well, what is the meaning of the lyrics for Everlong?" And he's like, "This really cool thing about the song is that when you sing it live at 80,000 people, they're singing it back to you for 80,000 different reasons, and that's how collectivism works." I listen to you say whatever the fuck it is, you're scapegoating somebody or a group of people. I agree with you on premise that these people or these other people are the problem. It's not me. It's not my failure to act. It's not my failure to get educated and principled on certain things. Right. It's them. You think so too, but for these other reasons. That's collectivism, is that you are not taking individual responsibility for what you should do and act and get principled on things and make decisions based on those principles and understand the history of what united us originally. You're now using a scapegoat as a means to be a vehicle to, project whatever political idea you've got. And none of you actually agree on everything or the majority of that stuff, which is why you end up turning on each other in the end, because there is no actual principle here. The root of this is your othering of a group of people. That only works so long.
Yeah, it is the art form of the political slogan.
Yeah.
And we talk about like MAGA all the time on the show, and like what does that mean now? Mm-hmm. And like Donald Trump through this last election cycle built this huge coalition of people that were MAGA but like, hey, can you nail down on the table for me like what 5 things, like what does that mean? Mm-hmm. And they would all have these just massive different lists, and it's like, okay. And then as soon as we start going into I think the first place you started to see it fracture was like during the tariff wars, when that kicked off like earlier in the year. And then all of a sudden people started like jumping off the boat in waves, and then all of a sudden fights inside of the coalition. And people looked across the aisle and realized like, hey, I thought we were MAGA. Yeah, I'm MAGA. Aren't you MAGA? Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden on this topic, they didn't realize that they completely disagreed, because you let your entire political belief come down to that's not even, that's an acronym, dog. Like, that's not even a slogan. You boiled it down even further.
Yeah, and it's not even his. It's
right.
100 fucking years old.
Yeah.
Right? It's repurposed it. But, it's another big one. I don't know if it was a fracture so much as it was exposing people who were just jumping on the winning side because they're,
that's fair. Yeah.
But the bombing Iran thing was another one. Mm-hmm. Because if you listen to Dave Smith or Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens or any of these other people that have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. One of the main themes between I don't know if Candace ever said that. I never listened to anything unless somebody sent it to me because she's a fucking imbecile. But Tucker and Dave Smith both said that Iran has escalatory dominance in the region. Mm-hmm. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
They have no escalatory dominance in any region anywhere, nor have they ever. Right? I mean, it's just that's a bald-faced lie. It's not just because neither one of them are dumb. They both know that that's not true what they said. Mm-hmm. And they as such, they're going to retaliate against us. We're going to have to put boots on the ground. We're going to war for Israel. That's they started at going to war for Israel, and they worked their way backwards, even though they knew each one of those sections was a lie. Yeah. And they were completely wrong about it. They knew they were going to be wrong somewhere in their heads. I think they do, although they are kind of delusional. But they knew they were going to be wrong. They were completely wrong. They paid no political price for it. Nobody that likes or follows them said, you know what, guys? It seems like you were pretty wrong about that. It seems like when you said back in April that the entire Middle East is about to go tits up, and now it's the quietest it's ever been in my lifetime, those two things don't agree. So it tells you that the people that are flocking to them are because of their charismatic delivery and not because of the information they provide, which is a big problem. Right?
Yeah, 100%. I think this is like one of the symptoms of subscriber-based culture that we've worked our way in on. Because like it used to be, at least back when, the early days of like mainstream media, that regardless of like what your political affiliation was, like you would have to sit either on the radio or on camera, and there would be that exchange of ideas back and forth, and you would have to rationalize your positions in real time. But now that we're all subscriber based, they can take the Groypers go this way, and the Tucker Carlson fanatics go this way, and Candace has her own people that go this way, and they're there to subscribe to it. Mm-hmm. And I think that starts becoming the self-licking ice cream cone, because each of these, and I do want to say up top here that I am not defaming or going after anybody's character. I am just engaging with like their arguments that they put out there. But they know for a fact what their audiences want to hear. And so then that becomes their brand, and then your brand becomes how you drive traffic, and then how you drive traffic comes back around. And that's why it's like, if I am the anti-Jew guy, everything has to have an anti-Jew slant to what I said. Otherwise, my subscribers won't be happy.
I definitely think the clicks thing is a part of it. But the other part of it is a commitment to, when you commit yourself so hard to a slogan that you can't back out away from it anymore.
Right.
That in and of itself becomes escalatory. Like, no matter what is going on, I have a commitment to this slogan. I have to find an excuse for how I'm still adhering to this slogan. That's collectivism, right? Well, I said make America great again and or America first means no more foreign wars. Well, what does that actually mean to you? We had this conversation about, well, are you saying you want to be isolationist and you agree with isolationism? Is that what you're saying? You know, then if that's what you mean, then let's have a conversation about isolationism. Right. But don't commit yourself so much to a slogan that no matter what it is that's going on, you're going to defend it. Because now you've become an ideologue for this, that there really is maybe no logical premise to defend. You're just sticking to it because you said this that one time and you've made a brand on it, and now you can't get away from it. Otherwise, you know, you're just completely destroying the slogan that you've sworn, I guess, yourself to defend.
Which is kind of hilarious, because on the left, they have no such compunction.
Yeah.
Like on the left, it's all about power. They'll say one thing one day and then turn around and like the completely antithetical position the next day.
Well, I think the right, like the woke right side that we're talking about has noticed that there are a lot of people who have no trust in the government anymore. And institutional trust is a founding tenet of having a civilization. There has to be institutional trust. A long time ago, people recognized we should write shit down and put it in a library, and somebody should be in charge of safeguarding this stuff because we need to document what happened, and that institution is now a place we can go to and trust what, you know, we're getting out of it, right? So institutional trust is something that is foundational. And what they have recognized is that there are so many people who are black-billed justifiably for the lack of trust they have in the institution, right? But they just use the lack of trust in the institution as a vehicle to get into people's brains and say whatever the fuck, you know, everything is a conspiracy now. Right. Nothing is real, you know, and then too, like, these institutions do themselves no favor when you get on X and you say, oh, we caught the guy. And then an hour later you say, oh, well, we haven't caught the guy. You know, so now you're sort of feeding into this bullshit, I guess, that they operate into. But that they've noticed that there's a lot of people who have no trust anymore, and it becomes really, really easy to start drawing your own conclusions from second and third hand information. Candace Owens has no first-hand account of a fucking thing. She just knows what people say to her, and she presents this shit as a fact. And I had this back and forth with somebody who was like, well, we should be defending people like Candace who do what they do. And I'm like, look, I'm not saying that you can't call out holes in a narrative. You should call out holes in a narrative. But there's a difference between using the holes in that narrative to build another fucking narrative that has no logic whatsoever, and then presenting your set of facts as the truth and calling it the truth. It's like the word truth has now been co-opted to actually mean my own conspiratorial skeleton of bullshit that I've put together and presented to you. Hey man, like, how many fucking videos have you seen? It's like the truth of this, the truth of that, right? And then you look at it and it's like, well, yes, you're noticing all of these problems too, but you're not presenting any firsthand accounts of anything. You're presenting secondhand information just like I have, and you're just drawing your own conclusions from it. That's not reality.
No,
like
what you're describing is a lack of, you mentioned it before, but it's syllogism. I think the phrase was coined by Aristotle in the Organon 2,500 years ago. Right. Not new, so there's no excuse for not knowing it. And the process goes like, the most famous example is there are three parts, usually two affirmatives or two negatives together, a universal or a particular affirmative and negative, or vice versa, together to draw a third conclusion, essentially. And that third conclusion can be taken at face value because it has the proof of the syllogism, right? So the most famous example is all men are mortal, Brandon's a man, Brandon's mortal, right? Very simple. So this flurry of probably mostly true information followed by a conclusion is not syllogism. That is not what it means. And if you can't track A plus B equals C. It's a math equation. If you can't track that back mathematically or reasonably, where the conclusion drawn is actually supported by the facts, then you've said nothing.
Correct.
You've wildly speculated, and
Yeah.
it's dangerous to do that.
Case-
Now, it's fun. If we're talking about a murder from the 1950s or something like that and trying to speculate on what may have happened or a conspiracy theory, it's fun.
Yeah.
But when you're doing it to blame a group of people
Yes.
for something that they probably had nothing to do with, because if anybody understood anything about geopolitics, like this idea that Israel may have been involved in Kirk's assassination, are you out of your fucking mind?
Yeah.
They don't take risks like that, even if they wanted to do
Right.
that. He's the conservative.
Right.
You
Literally.
cannot lose conservative support in America if you're Israel. You can't, right? It's nonsense.
Especially
So-
not from the conservative Christian
Yeah.
community.
Well, and they
Like,
step on their own argument when they say, "Well, you killed Charlie Kirk, and now I just found Nick Fuentes, and so that's everybody." It's like,
Yeah.
so what
Mm.
you're saying then is Israel killed the guy who moderate conservatives really appreciated listening to, so you would find the dude that wants to see them thrown in gas chambers again?
Yeah.
That makes no fucking
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, it's really silly. And then the other part of that argument is that, yeah, maybe I'm racist, but you're the one that made me that way.
Right,
No one
yeah,
can
no.
make you anything.
exactly.
If you had principles and now you don't, you never did.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think, it can be difficult to tell who's legitimate and who's not, because people are going to be wrong. Being wrong doesn't make you illegitimate.
Correct.
It makes you wrong, and then you get right afterwards, or you don't. If you choose to persist in being incorrect, that's a weird thing to do. But being wrong about something doesn't delegitimize you. What does is, some of the litmus tests you can look for are people that seek power in general. People that are trying to seek power generally should be, they should always be suspicious to you, but generally speaking, they're not good people. And people who pursue decentralization usually can be trusted, right? So this is how you can tell during a movement or revolution or whatever the fuck you want to call it. If somebody is just trying to limit government power or limit organizational or institutional power, that's probably fine. If they're trying to overtake it for themselves or for their group, then they're evil.
Yeah.
Most of the time, right? If the most important thing to you is liberty, and it should be because you're an American, then the most important qualities someone can have are the choices that they make as an individual. That's the most important quality to have, not their race or their gender or their political party or their ethnicity or religion or any of that bullshit. It'll be the choices that you make and the values that you can draw from that and the choices that others make that align with your values. That will be the most important quality that another human being can have. Not their group, them as an individual, right? And if you get into this business of judging people as groups, then you've lost the fucking plot. So I am very critical of Islam in general. I really recommend that you read the Quran sometime and see that it's fucked. There's nothing good in there. And the fact that those people are coming from these third world shithole countries where they're inbred and their IQs are between 65 and 75, you can look this up.
Facts.
I'm not making it up. They're coming here to try to infiltrate our country. If you interview one of them, they will say it to you directly. This is a Muslim country now because we're here.
Or we're breeding you
That
out.
is unacceptable. It's not collectivist to say that people that are voluntarily participating in an ideology that seeks to
Correct.
destroy my country is somehow collectivist. That's nonsense. That's not how this works. Is hating Al Qaeda make me a collectivist? That's fucking stupid.
Right.
So understand what these fucking words mean. I'm judging people based on their individual behavior. Somebody decides to participate in Islamism. If they decide to participate in Antifa or whatever, they're fucked, right? And I reject that shit.
Yeah. Well, to your point, when you push on these people that blame another group specifically, what problems or how are they subverting national culture? Explain that to me. And they can't, right? And to your point, well, if you're coming into my country and let's look at the UK. I've seen all these interviews where they're interviewing these Islamist community leaders. They're like, well, we've got 12 kids. There's 10 men here in my community that have 12 children, and you guys don't even have 12 kids among you. So that's the plan. We're going to be here for the long term. We're going to breed you out. In 40 years, the UK is going to be Muslim because there are more Muslim people here than there were before. Well, so what you're actively saying to me then is you are participating in the downfall of my society is what you're doing. when the collectivist thought you're talking about, there is no evidence that Israel is collectively going after the downfall of American society at all. When you present, that and ask them, well, what is your evidence of this? There is never any real evidence. It's always conjecture about something from the past, right? Like, it's there's no real evidence.
I mean, even if you just balance the logic of the position, it's retarded. So you can't have both of these things. There's two versions of this that are going on right now with regard to Israel specifically. And I don't give two fucks about Israel, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm not an evangelical Christian, so I don't give a shit. If they exist, good for them. They got a right to, and if they can defend it, let them. I don't care. If they want to buy our weapons, let them buy them.
Buy 'em.
We don't give them to them, but if they want to buy them, let them buy them. I don't give a shit about that. And I'm also not dumb enough to think that they are somehow worse than Muslims. Give me a fucking break.
Yeah.
I mean, just give me a fucking break. Go to the Middle East
Yeah.
for one day
Yeah.
and see if you still hold that fucking belief. Anyways, two of these really silly beliefs right now that people hold in their heads at the same time that are completely incongruent with one another. One is that, well, you can't even talk about Israel. You can't even talk about it. You're fucking talking about it right now. Every time I turn on my television or pull up fucking Twitter, somebody's talking about how they can't talk about it.
Right.
Do you not see how fucking stupid that is?
Yeah.
And the other one is that, oh, Israel can't survive without us. Okay, they can't survive without us, but they're trying to undermine our society entirely and destroy us. So which one is it?
Exactly.
Right? I can't survive without food, and I'm walking around in my fucking cornfield throwing poison on everything.
Right. That makes
You're
no
a
sense.
fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, man. I mean, just like for one goddamn minute, set aside any conclusion you have and just look at reality. You know what I mean? I think that's a useful thing to do from time to time.
Yeah.
Because we do build narratives for ourselves that need to be challenged from time to time, and it's a very important part of the dialectic process to go back and challenge assumptions. You know what I mean? Like if you learn one new piece of data, one new historical fact, or one new ethical, legal, moral, philosophical fact that you think, yeah, that's something I truly believe. Everything else you know should now be tested by that. Well, let's make sure that everything's going well. Most of the time, I think it does, right? But sometimes you're like, oh, I thought this, but now these two things are incongruent. Does that mean that these are particular affirmatives or negatives? Like they're only true in this moment, so they don't really interfere with each other? You should have that conversation with yourself. Because if you don't, you're just walking around contradicting yourself, and you're not a serious person.
Yeah.
Well, it goes back to finding that internal struggle, right? Like to be a human is to be in suffering and to be in struggle. But if you're doing that inside of yourself because you're being self-critical, then that forces growth, right? It's like the old idea of if you prune a rose bush, like then it grows and it comes back stronger, right? It comes back more healthy. And so that is the way to mentally fortify yourself and really spiritually fortify yourself and ensure that growth is continuing to happen, because if you're not growing, you become stagnant and then you're dying, right? But to a lot of these people that absolutely cannot be, of course they can't become self-critical because they can't even take criticism from outside. You know what I mean? And it takes much more self-discipline to criticize yourself than it is to take criticisms from somebody else. But
Yeah, let's. I want to talk about just this dialectic process for a minute, very quickly. And I've said it before, but you guys obviously know this too, so I kind of want to get your take on it. There's this process by which you develop an argument, and the treatise on it is Organon, and even the conversations between the Socratic conversations, the Platonic conversations, Aristotle conversations, all this stuff. And there have been people in modern history that use that same methodology as well. One of them is this book called The Courage to be Disliked, and it's a Japanese professor explaining Adlerian psychology to his skeptical 13-year-old student, basically, right? But they use that same dialectic format. Here are the facts. Here's the argument part. Blah blah blah. Organon talks about first on categories, right? Like what things are, how to define things, which I think is important. There's good examples in the modern world about how we define different things. One of them is the word collectivist. or any word. Somebody will see a word that's associated with something bad, and they'll think anytime that word shows up, it's bad.
Fascist.
Like, yeah, like you got to fucking calm down, dude. And then, you know, and on interpretation, I think is really important. That's where the affirmatives and negatives, particular and universal, come from. And it's where then the next is interpreting, and that's where syllogism originally came from. This idea of using reason and logic to figure out what the fuck I'm talking about, to get from point A to point C. What is B exactly? It's there's a proof statement, as mathematicians would call it, in there, and then I guess the prior analytics part and syllogism, and then the posterior analytics, which is like epistemology. What does it mean to actually know something, for it to be true, right? So we know that sometimes things are true universally always, or sometimes they're true only in this moment or for this person or something like that. We know those are two different things, and the same thing on the negative side. So how do you apply that to know if this thing right now I'm talking about is true? And then the next step after that, the fifth step, the fifth book in Organon, is how to construct your argument. That is the last part, except for sophistry, which is the final part. Book 6 is like, here's all the mistakes you can make here. So most of the people that are commentators now skip 1 through 4. They go to 5 to construct their argument. They're a good debater. Not that that means anything. Like, oh, I'll challenge you to a debate. Why? So you can talk fast and fucking cite things out of context. And if I stop to fucking look something up and be like, no, here's actually how you're wrong. It doesn't work that way anymore. Like, fuck off, dude. We're not doing that. And then literally, if you skip 1 through 4, go directly to 5, you commit every logical fallacy. You can see these in every argument these people make. There's no syllogism. There's no, well, A and B are true, and as such, C is true. That's how you make an argument. Or it's like, all these people fucking believe me. Well, that's a bandwagon fallacy. These things have been documented 2,500 fucking years ago. You're making the same mistakes right now, and you're fucking claiming that you know what you're talking about. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And the only way to get people to know what they're talking about is for individuals to educate themselves. The listener, the audience, has to educate themselves and know that they don't know what they're talking about.
I love,
because otherwise it's just me and that person debating over what, if they know what they're talking about. If you don't understand some of these fundamental principles, you can't hope to engage in the process.
I love that you use the term mathematical proof, and I say that because if you look at what Aristotle describes the organon as, he describes it as a tool. So you've described this entire process of building an argument based on reality and truths, and this, reasoning process that you have to go through. And if you look at the process of thinking and forming an argument to present something to somebody, it requires you to get involved in what you're actually thinking and not skip to number 5. You can use what he's talking about as a tool, right, to get to what you want to talk about and you want to talk about accurately, And so the theme there that you're talking about is actively participating in your own deductive reasoning and stripping yourself trying to strip yourself of your biases when you're coming to a conclusion on something. And if you arrive at a conclusion that's based on facts that doesn't jive with what you feel, that's okay. You should still present that information. And so it's almost like the way that you talk requires you to run yourself through a set of wickets almost and come out the other end with that proof that you're discussing. The same with an algebraic equation. You want to find slope, it's y equals mx plus b. Every fucking time it's going to be that.
Or if you want to start a business and get financing for it, you've got to show the fucking guy with the money that you've got a good idea and you know how to manage the fucking business. He doesn't just say, you know what, your inductive reasoning, your bottom up approach here, your brainstorming activity doesn't constitute this $5 million you're asking for. I'm sorry, son. That's just not how life works. But it works that way when we're making the most important decisions in our own lives and about our society and culture right now. Unacceptable, right? You should apply the same standard for evidentiary requirement for what you're putting into your own life, what you're putting into your brain, what you're putting into the social sphere that affects everybody as you do. If somebody came to you and asked you for $10,000, why not? Like it may seem trivial because there's more of it and it's broad and it's every single day and it spans across 350 million people. But it's way more important than the individual financial decision you're going to make because it will affect you and your children and your grandchildren and everybody that comes after that.
Yeah. Can I just talk about the fallacy you presented of everybody agrees with me? And you're talking about Aristotle, so I'm going to talk about another philosopher. Xenophon talks about it too in Harrow. He talks about how tyranny and the control of information and the way when you control the narrative, it becomes a golden cage is the phrase that he uses. And that golden cage means you're limited to everything that you are holding everybody else to. It's not freedom anymore. You know, anybody who may disagree with you or anybody that, you talk to and says something to may be a potential enemy. You kind of trapped yourself into this way of thinking. And if you are constantly using my follower count proves me right, or everybody thinks I'm right, so I'm right, you are painting yourself into a corner, like we were talking about before, where you have to stick to the slogan rather than just being the person who's willing to say, I'm wrong, here's why I'm wrong, and acknowledge it. That takes you from being wrong and being an idiot because you're just doubling down on you being wrong to I'm being wrong and let's learn together and learn from my example of being wrong. You're released from that cage of painting yourself into a corner where the information that you're controlling based on the fear you're creating of that collectivist thought is no longer holding anybody back. You're now letting everybody see the reality and draw conclusions from truth, which is better for everybody rather than it's just better for you as the person that holds all these people captive. You know, propaganda is as much an addiction for the person listening as it is for the person producing it.
I mean, it's designed to be comforting,
right,
or whatever.
You're
right?
going to fall back to your original principles when you're starting to question everything around you, and when somebody can reaffirm those biases for you, it feels good, and you stick to it.
Well, it's interesting from the right seeing this stuff because over the last couple of years, it's been challenged in a lot of ways, and people would say, right now, some of these, there's been a couple of generals that have resigned recently because they're butthurt about people not being fat, I guess. I don't know what the fuck they're upset about. Some Marine Corps dude resigned on the 29th of September, crying and bitching about that little meeting. It's like, where were you a couple of years ago when the administration was trying to force vaccinate people with an experimental vaccine?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, where were your principles then? You had none, and you have none now. You have a political opinion. You don't have principles. It's not the same thing, right? And it's weird to see it from people like just citizens on the right who were so convinced that they were principled, right? Like, hey, you don't have the right to tell me what to do as a group or as an individual in this moment. Like, yeah, you're right. That's correct. Now apply it. Apply it today as well.
It's easy to build a career on pointing out somebody else's wrongs. It's kind of like why Letitia James is having a really hard problem right now being held to the same legal precedent she built an entire career on.
That's not fair.
Right. Well, if you are somebody who made a large platform calling out the left for their crap, it's performative and it requires very little effort on your side to just point things out that are wrong. And when it comes down to it now, right, the right has power again, and you are now a voice in that sphere. Well, you can't just double down on the same shit you've spent 4 years calling out. Otherwise, now you've got egg on your face. But unfortunately, there are people who still make excuses for people like that, and it feels good to agree with them and to sit there in their little sphere of influence. But it's about personal responsibility. Like, those guys should be sitting there and saying, "Here's where we're wrong." And to the point about the group chat thing, I wanted to say earlier, we were talking about this last night. It would be so easy to not Streisand affect this and just say, you know what? I think this is a fucking group chat with a bunch of guys who had no clue that this was going to get exposed, right? Is it more than likely benign? Probably. Does it speak to a very big narrative going on our side right now? Yes. There are 500,000 other fucking post-grads looking for work in this sphere. What happened. We can move on from it. If that's what they fucking think about gas chambers and shit, then cool. There's somebody else willing to do your job and next man up, and we'll do it and then move on from it rather than, Streisand affecting it like you said and saying, this is fucking stupid. I don't want to talk about you killed Charlie Kirk. Like,
it's just so morally unresponsible.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a leader in the party to behave that way.
Yeah.
To not just say, this is a bunch of knuckleheads saying dumb shit, and they're young, and they probably, I don't know if they mean it or not. What I do know is that shit is unacceptable, what they said. However, the left is the party of violence and extremism, right? And we don't want to become that, so we're not going to tolerate this shit. That's a very easy thing to say.
Yeah.
Right. Without throwing the kid. I don't know. They're probably just retards, to be honest.
Yeah.
Saying dumb shit. Maybe one or more. A couple of them are fucking actual. I don't know what you would even call
Died
that.
in the wool
Bad-
believers.
bad
just,
faith
just
actors
bad
or-
faith. Yeah, is idiots. But
Bad apples.
probably it's just young dudes
trendy.
talking shit, which we do. Well, I do it on the show. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
But as a leader of the party, the vice president of the United States, and a fucking Marine, it is incumbent upon you to say, no, those are bad ideas. I reject those. But let's not get distracted from the fact. Right? You can say that.
Yep.
You can
can do both
reject that
things.
shit and then say the left is the one out there killing people. You can say both things. You can hold a standard, I believe it's called.
Yep.
A principled standard, and not excuse bad behavior on your side just because it's the left calling it out.
Yes, you should be able to walk and chew bubble gum at the same time.
I had a dream last night where Candace and I were at a fucking concert, and I was chewing. It was a big piece of gum too, and then some midget ran up to me, female midget, like, "Hey, can I get some gum?" Like, I don't. Oh, I gotta ran away.
Oh shit.
I don't know what that dream is supposed to tell me. To be honest.
I thought you were gonna tell me
Israel
Charlie Kirk
killed
came to you in a
Charlie.
dream.
Yeah.
Oh, the Jews killed Charlie.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
I
Yeah,
thought that's what you were gonna
makes sense.
say.
Yeah. Well, that's what Candace Owens. No, that Candace, my Candace, not Candace
Right.
Owens.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, no, Candace Owens was definitely being.
I'm really sorry about that, Candace. That was my mistake.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Candaces going on. Yeah. Thanks
Yeah.
for admitting you're wrong. We're sticking to our principles.
Yeah,
right now.
she's Candace Ice actually.
Canned ice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not canned ace.
Ass is
Yeah,
ace.
yeah.
Candace spells it with
Yeah,
an A.
canned ice as in immigration customs enforcement. Yeah. Well, look, we got to go do this other show in a sec. Tell everybody about your show and where they can find you guys.
Yeah. Well, we primarily exist over on Rumble. We do have our YouTubes. Everything that we do podcast-wise gets posted to our YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and then Rumble. Our live shows, we've stopped streaming over on YouTube because we just get butt-fucked every time we do over there. But Rumble, we always tell people, go find us first on Rumble. You can listen to us on those other platforms too, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. Yeah. I appreciate your time,
that
man,
it?
for real.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
And I always sign off with "Go with God, guys," and don't be a dick.
Yeah. The live show is where we talk about more like politics. We have two different shows. The podcast that you were talking about earlier, we get into some investigative stuff. The last one we just did was with Matthew Pajot, the Pajot brothers, Jonathan and Matthew. More of a like conversation on like interpreting some of the mysticism, I guess, of the Bible. And then we had on Peter McCullough recently. We've had John Kiriakou. Those are pretty good episodes to sit there and listen to him talk about stuff. We do some deep dives like on the Vegas shooting. I know you know Aaron Love from One's Ready, good friend of the show as well. We've done a lot of shows with him, and then our live show, Live Fire and Check Fire, Wednesdays and Fridays. We get into the news and talk about it and have a lot of conversations like this. Recently been going after some of these creators, so we have had to watch some of Candace's stuff. Get into what she's talking about and sort of break it down to disabuse people of the sophistry that she likes to put out there as reality. Yeah, go find us on Rumble.
Sweet. Well, thanks for coming today. I appreciate the time.
No, thank you.
Thank
yeah,
you
man.
all for listening. This has been Citizen.